Hello, my name's Darren Holmes, and today I want to talk to you about the Primer Trainer. This is the Primer Microprocessor Trainer. It's revision 1, manufactured by EMAC, and it's 1992. You can see the trainer consists of a small keypad for input, some 7-segment displays for output, and a series of ICs that make up the microprocessor trainer. In the top left-hand corner, we have the 8085 CPU. That's the central processor unit. Just below it, we have the optional 8251 UART. UART stands for Universal Asynchronous Receiver Transmitter. It uses the RS-232 standard. Its job is to take 8-bit parallel data and convert it to single-bit serial data. Now, because our trainer works on 5 volts, we have a MAX 232 IC, and through the use of 4 capacitors, it boosts the voltages up to plus and minus 8 volts. So right next door to our 8085 is a 2732 EEPROM. EEPROM stands for Erasable Programmable Read-Only Memory. Now this is 32K, so it's 8 bits wide, and it houses the monitor operating system. So as soon as your CPU is activated, it's going to grab instructions from the MOS and start executing them. So this is basically your operating system. We use eMOS version 2.0. It's an enhanced MOS version which has additional instructions to allow our CPU to communicate over the serial port. So right next door to our EEPROM is our RAM chip. This is optional RAM. It's 32K, and once again it is 8 bits wide. Now you can see it sitting up off the printed circuit board because it has a battery backup underneath. Right next to our RAM chip is the 8155 PPI. That's Programmable Peripheral Interface. It also contains 256 bytes of RAM. So if you did not have the expansion RAM installed, the PPI contains 256 bytes of RAM that you could be using. Now in hex, that's 00 to FF. So you can see when you turn on the primer trainer, it says FF01. That would be the first memory location in the PPI if we did not have the expansion RAM installed. So the PPI's RAM goes from FF00 all the way up to FFFF. The 8155 includes 3 ports. One port is to communicate with the dip switch that is on the primer trainer, so that's 8 bits wide, so that goes to one port. The other port communicates with the LEDs, and there's 8 LEDs, so that goes to another port. And the C port we use for analog input. So we'll be covering those in great detail later on. Right next door to our 8155 PPI is the 8279. Now this is a programmable keyboard and display controller. So what it does is it refreshes the 7-segment displays on a continuous basis, and it also scans the keypad to see if you're pressing any keys, and then communicates that information back to your 8085 CPU. Now unfortunately, the 8279 is now an obsolete part. So EMAC no longer makes the revision 1 primer trainer. So this is the primer microprocessor trainer revision 3, and it was made by EMAC, and it has a last date on here of 2005. You can see that they have upgraded the keyboard and used a membrane keyboard. They still have the 7-segment displays. All the ICs are in approximately the same location, so your 8085 CPU, your 8251 UART, your EEPROM with the monitor operating system, the expansion RAM with the battery backup, and the 8155 PPI programmable peripheral interface. You notice the support ICs are now surface mount because that's a lot less expensive. But you can see right here where the 8279 used to exist, we now have a different set of ICs in here. So upon closer examination, you can see the 8279 programmable keyboard and display controller has been replaced by a microchip PIC16C65 microcontroller. And this is being programmed to perform all the functions of the 8279. So on both versions of the primer trainer, we do have these external connector pins at the back here, and these connect to the 8155 PPI, so any of the dip switch or LEDs can also be brought out on this particular connector. We also have an expansion connector over here that brings out all of the data and address lines as well as the control lines. So we'll be talking about them in later videos. We also have a selection of jumpers. These particular ones select the speed of the serial port. We also have jumpers that determine where our RAM is, whether it's going to be using the RAM on the 8155, using the expansion RAM, and the size of the EEPROM that we're going to be using. Now, unfortunately, because some of these other ICs have become obsolete, EMAC is no longer manufacturing the primer trainers. So since EMAC no longer manufactures or sells the primer trainer, today I'd like to introduce you to PSIM85. This is the primer trainer simulator for the Intel 8085. In this video I'm on version 1.0 and it was written by myself. I've used a photograph of the revision 1 primer trainer so that all my keys line up in the same location as they did in the original primer trainer. I have an on button and I've captured the same beep as the primer trainer, and it does come up at FF01. All the memory locations have been reset to 00, so if you use the increment key, it will step through the memory locations, except I've stored them all as 00. Function key will allow you to examine the register pairs. So the AF register pair is also reset to 00. On the left-hand side, I've captured the reset key that brings us back to FF01 and resets all the registers to 00. I also have on here the 8 output LEDs and the 8 input dip switches. The sliders on the dip switches do not work as sliders, so underneath I've put a little button. So if you click on the little button underneath the individual sliders, they will toggle between logic 1 and logic 0. Up here I have a file menu, so we can actually load RAM or save RAM. So if you enter in a large program, you are able to save it and load it again later. The save as is not functioning right at the moment. I will work on that. Print RAM will actually disassemble all the opcodes for you. Under View, you can view the register contents. So in here I have the hex
as well as the binary representation, which will be very helpful when we're trying to determine what's set and not set in the flag register. Also under View, I have the 8085 command list, and all the codes that are in this list are supported by the Primer Trainer simulator. So the simulator needs no specific installation. All you have to do is unzip the files. So I'm going to show you the files associated with the Primer Trainer simulator next. I just want to show you the files necessary to run the Primer Trainer simulator. So underneath this video, I'll put all these files in a zip file for you so that you can download them and run the simulator on your own computer. Make sure that you unzip them to a directory. You can either use your USB drive or your hard drive and just give it an appropriate name. I just used _psim85. Now the simulator was written in Liberty Basic, so a lot of these files are associated with Liberty Basic. So when you create an executable in Liberty Basic, they also give you a TKN file. So this is your basic program, and it's just being tokenized to run faster. You're going to need the .sll files and the .dll files. These are required to run your executable program. So these will be included in the zip folder. Also in here I have a few additional files. The primer bitmap, that's the background for the simulator. So that's just a picture of the Primer Trainer. I have the primer.wav file. This is the sound file that generates the beep. Also in here I have the EMAC. That's address location 0000 all the way up to 7FFF. Even though the Primer Trainer only uses about 4K of memory, I copied the entire EEPROM in here. I also copied the RAM into here. So this is the RAM address 8000 all the way up to FFFF. So all these files will be in a zip file, and I'll put them below this video. At the time of making the video, we're on version 1.0, so as I go through each of the lessons, if I find a problem, the version number will increase and I'll repost it at the bottom of this video.
So I just wanted to show you that if you do have a Windows tablet, it can't be an Android tablet, it has to be a Windows tablet, you can run the simulator on your tablet and it will be touch screen, so all the keys will work by touch. This is a copy of the textbook that we've been using for our course. It's called Microprocessor Architecture, Programming and Applications with the 8085. This is the 5th edition. So if you're looking for a copy of the textbook, I thought I'd give you a close-up of the ISBN number. So this book was published by Prentice Hall, but they've now stopped publication of this book.
Now if you go into Google and type in the name of your textbook, you will get several search results. One of the first results to come up will be Amazon. Now this is amazon.ca. You can see the textbook cover has changed. It's now the 6th edition, and it's now published by Penram. You'll notice it's a paperback edition, and it's starting from $28.56 Canadian. I'm sure you can also purchase it through your college bookstore. If you keep going through your search results, you'll come up with a website called Scribed, and in here they have actually scanned in the 5th edition of the textbook. They seem to have scanned in all 832 pages. So you can actually preview the textbook. Now I highly recommend that if you've signed up for a course in microprocessors and this is the assigned textbook, that you do purchase it because the contents is very important. I want to show you how to access the EMAC Primer Trainer documentation. The easiest way to find it is to do a Google search, type in EMAC Primer Trainer. One of the first search results that should come up should be from www.emacinc.com/primertrainer. EMAC has a web page for the Primer Trainer, even though they no longer manufacture or sell the Primer Trainer. However, they do have their support documentation. So in their menu bar, just click on Support, and we're going to be looking for product manuals and drivers. On this list, we're going to scroll down until we find EOL, which stands for End of Life Legacy Trainer Systems, and this includes the Primer Trainer. We want to go over to the Download button, and they're telling you that this is an FTP site. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. So click on Download, and it brings up a menu of all the file directories that are accessible to you. So we have Primer Trainer, Primer Trainer Assembled, Primer Trainer Kit. The two directories that we're interested in is Primer Trainer Assembled. Now this is for version 3 of the Primer Trainer, and Primer Trainer Kit. So if you click on Primer Trainer Kit and then click on Manuals, you can see this is the Primer Self-Instruction Manual Release 2.5. We have Revision 1 schematics, but this particular file is password protected. You want to get the schematics from Primer Revision 1 Schematics, Primer Self-Instruction Manual Appendix D. So these are the schematics that we're going to be using. They also have the Primer EMOS manual. That's the Enhanced Monitor Operating System. That's contained on the EEPROM. Down here we have the Primer MOS, or Monitor Operating System 2.7 listing. And that has some comments in there to tell you how the operating system works. So we can go back up to a higher level, and the next higher level, if we go to Primer Trainer Assembled and click on Manuals, we can see we have the Self-Instruction Manual for Primer Revision 3. We also have the Primer Revision 3 schematics. If you click on Self-Instruction Manual for Primer Revision 3, it will ask you if you want to open it in Adobe Acrobat, or you can save the file to your USB drive. I'm going to open it with Adobe Acrobat. You can see it says the Primer Trainer Self-Instruction Manual. It's a little on the large size, so you can change to 100%. So scrolling through here, it has the technical circuitry description. Now remember, this is for revision 3, so you need to open the revision 2.5 documentation for all the circuitry description for the revision 1 board. However, in here we have the lessons. So this first lesson is using the monitor operating system. The second lesson is running your first program. And you can see there are many more lessons, all the way up to lesson number 26. So I plan to go through each of these lessons with you. We'll try them out on the original Primer Trainer, and we'll try them out on the Primer Trainer Simulator. If we have any problems with the Primer Trainer Simulator, we'll update the simulator so that they will work with each of the lessons. So if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you will be notified every time I post a lesson.